Starbucks tips, train updates, and the Matchgirls strike of 1888 today on Good Work. Hello, workers of the world. Welcome to Good Work Podcast, a roundtable discussion show about the world of working. Working is a major part of our lives, so we should talk about it. I'm James Mastriani.
I'm Matt Newell.
And I'm Jake Lloyd Bacon, and we are comedians, writers, and performers, and not journalists. So take that and do with it what you will.
Yeah, that's right.
How everybody have an enjoyable Thanksgiving? It's been a couple weeks since we've seen each other. Did you guys all go and murder anybody on Black Friday?
No.
I did not. I did. You know what I did do though? Very unethical of me. I did make a pretty substantial purchase on Cyber Monday on Amazon.
Well,
yeah.
see where your allegiances lie.
Well, seeing as you really can't, it's kind of hard to purchase ethically anywhere. You might as well take advantage of a great deal on a brand new Vitamix.
Oh,
that's right, everybody. James Mastriani is a Vitamix man now.
James Welcome Mastriani to the family. Welcome to the family.
About to become insufferable.
Wow. I will tell you what, man. Nothing like it.
You can blend bone.
Yeah. For like 5 days I've had it, and I feel different. I think people view me differently now. I feel like, I was
going to ask, are you taller?
Yeah, 100%, which is crazy. Yeah. Yeah.
You're 100% taller.
I'm 100%. Yeah.
Whoa, good God.
I know.
Disgusting. We got to kill him.
12 feet tall. Well, it's a good thing. It's a good thing that we could, grind up bones in the Vitamix, so we'll be able to get rid of his 12 feet body taller.
That's what giants eat, is bones.
I forgot I wanted to talk about this.
You didn't.
I didn't forget because I'm going to do it right now.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
It's the season of giving here, and there's a lot of giant, big corporations like Amazon who definitely don't need your money the holiday season. We talked a lot about that when we did our Black Friday episode. But you guys familiar with the Iliad, the bookshop in the Valley here in LA?
No.
The Iliad is a used bookshop that's been around for decades. It is a staple of Los Angeles. It is an incredible place. It is one of those bookshops that you just walk into, and it's like a bookshop of your dreams. They have everything. They specialize in used books, and they're at the top of every list of the best used bookshops. They have two awesome bookshop cats who just kind of roam free and who live there. It's a really incredible place run by really incredible people. And last month, during the beginning of the season, some piece of shit arson tried to burn it down. The Iliad has a pile of free books that they just offer to people outside of just the fact that they're an awesome store. By their front door, they have boxes, and it's like, hey, this is stuff that we're not going to be selling. Feel free to come by, take stuff, leave stuff, whatever you'd like. Somebody piled up all of those free books, poured gasoline, and lit them on fire.
Jesus.
Luckily, a neighbor noticed, because the Iliad's in the center of an area that's by a lot of residential stuff. So luckily, an actual neighbor who lives nearby noticed it, called the fire department. They got there quick enough. Luckily, the cats survived because the cats live there. There was tons of notes with hate speech written on them, left all around the building. So it was a very specific attack. The reason I bring it up is because obviously the Iliad is a small independent shop, and this is a sort of podcast where we talk about good work and people who are just trying to get by and make a living and do good in their communities. And I want to urge everybody to check out iliadbooks.com and check out on Twitter at Iliad Bookshop, ILIAD Bookshop. They have a GoFundMe set up And you can also buy stuff online. You can buy gift cards online. If you're an LA listener, consider doing some holiday shopping there. Just the amount of damage that they have to repair, the amount there was inventory lost. The entire shop is painted. It's a mural, like around the entire thing by local artists, and they want to repaint because obviously most of that was destroyed around the front door. So yeah, just kind of an awful, really shitty thing that happened, and I wanted to bring it up on this show specifically to urge listeners to check out the Iliad or IliadBooks.com or Iliad Bookshop on Twitter. And maybe if you have any book shopping that you want to do this season or in the new year with some of those sweet checks from grandma, consider checking them out.
And if you're the one, if you're listening to this episode and you're the one that tried to burn it down, we're gonna find you.
We're fucking coming for you.
We are.
We're gonna find you.
We have a very specific set of skills. I'm not sure what those are, but I know we have them.
Would be so disappointed if that person was a listener.
Oh my God.
Well, like, you know what? It's like, when they caught him, his favorite podcast was Good Work.
Yeah. Considering like the hate speech and shit, that would be disheartening.
That would be a bummer.
Anyways, let's talk about.
That's good.
Some news.
That's a great. You should. Books are great too.
Yeah,
don't burn them.
Books are fantastic. And this guy was obviously a real twisted piece of shit, and I hope he gets caught.
Yeah.
So for our news of the week here, let's go to the chief. And when I say let's go, I'm talking about me remembering where this link was. There it is. Hey, New York Police Department employees and a city correction department captain in New York State were among 19 people charged in a federal complaint unsealed with submitting fraudulent applications for funds intended to help small businesses survive the coronavirus pandemic. The accused, 17 of whom are city and state public employees, listed themselves as owners of businesses that in some cases did not exist in applications for funds through the Small Business Administration's Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program. Oh, that's a mouthful. The Small Business Administration's Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program. They submitted applications to that as well as the Paycheck Protection Program. So federal prosecutors in Manhattan, are charging these folks with fraud. None of the New York Police Department employees charged are officers, though. They're I guess whatever the difference is of an officer in the New York PD. There are other
what does that mean?
Employees. Think of one could argue that maybe some of them are higher up. They're above officers, maybe, or they're employees that work in bureaucratic divisions. Yeah.
If you're a custodian at the police department, are you in the police?
I'm going to take a guess that those are contractors. I'm going to take a guess that they're not.
So it wouldn't be like that. That's what I was thinking when you're like, they work there, but they're not officers. Like, they just clean it up.
I mean, it could, hell, these could be people that work in, the billing department. It could be,
right. Accounting. They probably don't have.
Did you say a clowning?
Accounting.
Oh, a clowning. Which is, of course, who pays clowns. The accountants. Anyways, the defendants collectively stole more than $1.5 million from the SBA.
You're going to want to leave a marker for that joke because you're going to want to take that out.
Financial institutions. One defendant, Delilah Cummings, 37, a school paraprofessional, claimed in her loan application that she owned a hair and nail salon with 45 employees and $500,000 in annual revenue, according to the complaint. Bank records showed that Cummings, in fact, had no significant source of income other than for her Department of Education salary, investigators said. People were charged with wire fraud. People were charged with all sorts of fraud. Information on their attorneys is not immediately available. There's a whole list here of the people, but we don't have to get into the specific names. Maybe we should put these people on blast. But, listen.
James Mastriani.
Right.
Wow, what a crazy coincidence.
Yeah. It's spelt slightly. There's a Y in there somewhere.
Yeah, it's James with a Y.
Yeah, scheming to steal government funds intended to help small businesses weather a national emergency is offensive, U.S. Attorney Damian Williams said in a news release. And as public employees, these folks should have known better. This office will continue to prosecute those who use fraud to line their pockets with taxpayer money. Auditors say the speed with which the federal emergency loan programs were set up in the early months of the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020 left some of the programs vulnerable to fraud, though millions of legitimate businesses benefited from the programs. There's no doubt they had a positive impact, speaking of the programs. However, the management of these programs needs to be dramatically improved, says U.S. Comptroller General Gene L. Dodaro. Yeah, I mean, this is one of those instances where it's like, we can't have nice things. Like we set up something that's supposed to be good and supposed to help, and you give an inch and people take a yard, I guess.
Yeah.
Or in this instance,
shame.
You give an inch and people who don't deserve the inch steal the inch.
Yeah.
Absolutely shame and disgusting. But also, I mean, who among us hasn't cheated on our taxes, I suppose? I don't know. There's something about the roles on this list that I kind of want more information about what exactly these people do. If these people are just like equally underpaid government employees who are just like not getting the benefits they need, then I go, all right, whatever. You did what you could. But at the same time, you had people, billionaires like the Kardashians or whoever getting millions for those loan programs that they didn't need. And like these giant bailouts during the pandemic. And I feel like these people aren't nearly as bad as those people.
Yeah. Yeah, and these were all like within the police.
Well, it said 5 New York Police Department employees and a city correction department captain were among 19 people charged in a complaint.
Oh, they were among.
So it was, yeah. So they are part of those. The reason I think that since the chief tends to, report on, the civil servants, stuff like that. That's why this is. So they're not all of them. Some of them might just be James Mastriani.
I feel like at this point, I don't know. I'm like, what is, I'm really curious as to the decisions to prosecute government officials who, like what is that line that gets crossed? I guess it's because like so many government officials do it. Right. So many government officials, like, they find ways of, taking a little money from donations here or from their campaign, or they find these different ways of really, really. Or taxpayer. I guess it's different when it's like donations versus taxpayer dollars.
Right.
I feel like with taxpayer dollars, it's like, we really that's the one where we really gotta I guess maybe throw people under the bus. I don't know.
Well, I mean, it's
interesting.
There's something to be said that it's not like the government generally does what we want with our tax dollars anyway.
Yeah, totally.
But I guess I would rather our tax money go to somebody frauding for, $50,000 than throwing that $50,000 into the military. Like if I had to choose, I'd be like, yeah, you know what? Give Samantha $50,000.
Yeah, that's true.
Like maybe her car isn't working and she needs a way to get to work or some shit. Like, I don't know. It's
Speaking of, did you guys see, I mean, this is a little bit of an aside, but did you guys see that the Pentagon admitted that it doesn't know where like almost $3 trillion is?
No, I did not. I also don't know where $3 trillion is, though.
And it happened the same exact week that they unveiled that, and Fox News did it in the fucking weirdest way possible. That brand new nuclear bomber that's like this big secret, super expensive nuclear bomber.
I mean, it must not be that much of a secret.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was a secret before they were like,
what does it look
what
like?
We've been working on.
Does it look like?
Say what you're gonna say. Does it look super cool? Because that's what
like
I'm
a spaceship.
Thinking.
I was gonna say like a spaceship. Like
it totally looks like a spaceship. Yeah.
Because that's that's all those sightings is just them testing that thing. Because when did they start building? They probably building it 20 years ago, right?
Totally.
How long does it take to make to like start to finish?
Let's look.
Jake,
Let's see
look it
here.
up.
So this is called. So this is the B-21
the B-21.
Raider.
Oh, it looks like a lot of those other stealth ones, like from the
Yeah.
90s that we were all thought were cool looking because they look like a boomerang.
Yeah. Stealth bomber.
Yeah. And they did a whole like I saw this clip online. I guess Fox News did a whole it's so weird. Like showed with like patriotic music playing is like the fucking it came out of the thing for the first time, this new nuclear bomber and every like tears rolling down people's eyes.
Right. It looks like
we're
it
a
looks like
pathetic country.
It looks like Kevin Feige announcing the next phase of fucking Marvel or like
Yeah.
Apple's new iPhone. It's like, check this out, and they like pull the sheet off of it. Oh, it's atrocious.
It's
really funny.
It's gross, is what it is.
And then they're like
it's so dorky too. It's just shut up. Like it just makes them look like big dorks, like
yeah. Like if we didn't have the technology we had, if we didn't have the technology we had, and this were like the 1500s, and like England unveiled a brand new trebuchet or something,
right?
With like
right.
patriotic music playing and like this big.
They just like, where's this $3 trillion? Okay, next up, the new jet, and it still has the price tag on it. It says $2,900,000,000,900.
Like
the
also,
guy has like,
I think we found it.
There's something to be said about presentation too, because it's just the footage that I'm watching. It's just like a camera in the distance looking at it front, and from the front, it doesn't really look like anything. It looks just like a sliver. At least like put a mirror above it, like you're watching, synchronized swimming on a stage in Broadway. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, put some mirrors around it.
Yeah, I want to see what it looks like from above.
Put some smoke. Put it in some water. Give it some depth. Like,
yeah. All right, like it. Let's
like a
let me see what it
runway
looks
show.
like.
I should have. Yeah, we need to get Heidi Klum and I forgot Tim Gunn down there to do a fashion show.
Make it work,
Jet. Make
it work,
I
Jet.
like that.
Yeah, America's next top war machine.
A war machine.
What was so special about it? Is it supposed to be invisible?
Well, what's special?
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, is that what the deal is? Like from radar or something?
Do you remember?
Well,
I was gonna say, do you
special
remember when
about
you
it.
were a kid and you thought that it meant that it was invisible? Because I sure did. When it was like, oh yeah, it's a stealth bomber, it's invisible, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh,
Can't be
you just
detected,
can't
yeah.
see it, and that just meant that it doesn't show up on radars and stuff. And I was a kid, I was like, how do they do that?
You thought it had a cloaking device, like
Yeah,
a
exactly.
Klingon war.
Yeah, exactly.
Warbird.
They came up with the invisible jet.
So, first of all, to manufacture one B-21, how much do you guys think one B-21 jet costs?
All right, Jake, you go first.
$1 billion. $1
$1,000,001,000.
Oh, god damn it!
One jet is $700 million.
You
guys are pretty close. Pretty close.
$700 million. How many do they have, and how many do they need? Is it like the thing where you only need two?
I think so, because I think like after that the world ends, right?
Right.
Like,
I know.
it's like, hey, we only need two of them, which is good. One drops one in the south, one drops one in the north, and then we all die. And I guess like they did it in direct. I mean, like it's perfectly dialectical here in that like China built one,
Right.
and then in response, America was like, we have to build a new one too. Okay, so here's a little bit more information. Oh, my bad. It looks like that was the original starting price.
Okay.
When the idea of it was first presented, it ballooned up. One of these planes is $2.2 billion to make.
Holy shit.
Oh, so
Yeah.
you did win. You did win, Matt.
Yeah. That's fucking crazy. And the idea was to have a fleet of 132 of them. But right now, they just have one, it looks like. So we have money for that. also, the Pentagon lost almost $3 trillion in the couch cushions, right? But meanwhile, can't get fucking health care.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that one bomber,
crazy.
That one bomber could end like the unhoused crisis in America. Like,
yeah, totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Fantastic.
What is a trillion? Is that 1,000 billion?
Yes.
Okay.
And then 1,000 trillions is 1 quadrillion.
Oh. Well, now what's a bazillion?
Oh, that's a buttload.
Oh, okay, great.
That's 6 buttloads.
Which 2 of those 12 buttloads we all know is a shitload.
Yeah. It's a shitload. Yeah.
And 10 shitloads is a fuck ton.
And then a fuck ton.
Listen, we're don't ever tell us this podcast isn't educational.
Yeah, this is why you tune in every week to get this kind of insanely intelligent.
Speaking of vehicles that move shit around, there's a lot of talk about trains in the news.
You know, I want to leave a marker that segue.
I fucking crushed it because just to highlight it, just to add some music behind it.
Give it the grand the grand entrance it deserves.
Yeah, that's right.
It's a somber day. It's a somber week, everybody. For the labor movement in this country. I hate to say, that phrase where it's like disappointed but not surprised. It just feels cliche, but it really is fucking how I'm so not surprised. And so if you haven't really been paying attention, the railroad strike was averted by Brandon in Washington. Let's go, Brandon. Joe Biden decided, he was the most pro-labor, by the way, self-proclaimed most pro-labor president of generation. He was given a chance to take labor sides, and he chose the capitalist side. And he made it illegal for the railroad workers to strike. And it's not the first time this has happened in our history. We've done it with other industries as well. Anything that tends to potentially fuck up capital for the capitalists, the government will take over and they will legislate in their favor. They always do. Democrat, Republican, it doesn't matter. I really do think, and I think it's easy for people. We've been so, this word democracy, we've been so conditioned to just wantonly refer to America as a democracy, but I think with closer examination, that's kind of laughable at this point. And I think that I don't think it's ever been a democracy, and I think it's a dictatorship of capital. It's a dictatorship of at this point corporations.
Sure.
And until we all realize that is the case, that both of our major parties, no matter what, will always side with capital, you can't call this a democracy. And they did it in 1980. In fact, they threw my own uncle in prison when my uncle went on strike as an air traffic controller. Reagan threw him and a bunch of other heads of the unions in prison. They've done it with the railroad workers before. They've done it with the steel industry, everything. Anything that is just going to fuck shit up for people making money. And it goes, this is why we need class consciousness as well. Because we view ourselves as consumers and because our media portrays this as a consumer issue, right?
Right.
And this bummed me out so much. All of the media stories about this which made it sound like, instead of focusing on, the exploitation of these workers and seeing how that if they get away with this, how it affects all of us who are workers. It affects all of us. But instead, it's been looking at and painted as a consumer crisis, right?
Right. Like it's more about, you will be more affected by them going on strike.
Totally.
Then your job, your livelihood, your children's jobs in the future will be affected by them being allowed to strike.
Totally. And even some media outlets like using phrases like, railroad workers holding economy hostage.
Yeah.
Go fuck yourself. And that's the point of dual power. That's the point of having the right to strike is it's to create pressure and leverage for your advantage. It's not holding anybody hostage, but when we view it, when we view ourselves as consumers, that's what it looks like or feels like, and it feels validated because then you go, well, now my stuff isn't going to get here for Christmas.
Right.
And you never hear them talk about the reason why they're striking. They don't bring up, they want days off.
Totally.
It's like, if they would phrase their stories like that, it's like, railroad workers hold economy hostage because they want days off. It'd be like, oh wait,
right?
Yeah, they should then. They
you know what? I'd hold the economy hostage too,
right?
Because they'd be like, oh wait, they don't get days off. Because once you hear that, you go like, that's insane. They don't get sick leave.
Yeah.
Everybody gets sick leave.
Yeah. It's
you know what I mean. That type of job needs it more than.
Well,
I'm not saying everybody. I think there are. I know there's jobs that don't, but like, I when I worked at Pete's, we got sick leave.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like it is
So the way it all came about, and a lot of this has come out since the vote. So I'll preface it by saying this, and I think this is really, really telling about our structure of the world and the country we live in, right? Since the beginning, management and the ownership of the railroad companies have been antagonistically approaching this with bad faith negotiations because, and they've told the unions this the whole time, because they knew from day one that Congress would step in and vote in their favor. And this is something that they have been telling the unions for months. This is kind of like how they've been utilizing their leverage because they knew no matter who was in office, this is what was going to happen.
Right.
Cut to, here we are. We're a couple weeks from Christmas. And basically Congress was waiting for, the Democratic-led Congress was waiting for Biden. He's the leader of the Democratic Party at this point as president. He gave the go-ahead. He gave the green light. I'm sure his advisors and everybody were probably like, look, if you let this go through, then what's going to end up happening is it'll cause, a recession. You'll get blamed for this. His poll numbers are already atrocious.
Right.
So he's factoring in his future with all of this, of course. And so then the House, they, legislate a bill. And because of the progressive wing of the House, they decided to go ahead and create two separate bills. Again, they didn't have to do any of this. All of this could have been in one bill. Or Biden also could have forced the capitalists to be the ones to acquiesce, right? There's nothing that says that he has to force the workers to accept this deal, but he did. The most pro-labor president of our generation, and
who's famously attached to trains. There's a guy who like rode the train every day.
Yeah, Scranton Joe.
Yeah, exactly.
A man of the people. And so afterwards, they decided to create this second bill, the bill that would give these workers even though they were asking for 15 days paid leave, it would
Right.
give them 7.
Right.
But they knew it would never pass the Senate.
Right.
It would need 60 votes in the Senate. There's no fucking way that many Republicans are going to vote for that because
Right.
the Republicans, unlike the Democrats, at least the Republicans consistently know who their masters are and favor the capitalists.
Right. Right.
They're
predictable.
Yeah, they're predictable. You always know what they're going to do. They are going to vote in favor of the owners of capital. And so now, after, they had leverage, they had an opportunity to show the country and the world what it looks like to stick up for what it is that, you believe you are worth as a worker. And the federal government came in and said, fuck you. Not only do you not get your paid days that you're asking for, but now moving forward, if you try to strike, you will be fined or potentially go to jail.
Right.
So this, I don't think, and I know our mainstream media is not covering this a whole lot because they don't cover labor issues a whole lot. That's why we do this podcast. Or at least they don't cover it from a labor's angle. But in my opinion, make no mistake, this is a huge loss.
Yeah. And it should be noted too
labor.
that everybody who voted against even the 7 days all have paid time off.
Yep.
As employees. Every single one of them.
Yeah.
What happens if they just quit?
I mean, I think you're going to see a lot of that. Actually, I think they're predicting.
They can't go to jail for that. I mean,
not at all. But it's still about their livelihood. Can they afford to? Quit?
I know. But it's just stupid.
Yeah. I think a lot of them are going to have to. I mean, there was this guy they were interviewing, who's been a longtime engineer, and he was on this labor podcast I listened to, and he was like, I don't even know my son. I never get to see my son. My son is almost a teenager. We don't even know each other. And I might just have to quit this job completely because I want to be able
to live his life. Yeah, he wants to live his life. Yeah.
Yeah, they're taking away people's humanity.
Right.
It's really disappointing, and I think that I really hope that we're in a phase now where I think we are. I think people are starting to realize just how damaging the Democrats are as well.
That's what I was going to say when you were talking about the Republicans. I was like, at this point, you kind of know that about the Democrats too. They're always going to go with the money. They just say they aren't. You know what I mean? They have this veil of doing the right thing, but they always do this exact same thing too.
Yep, absolutely.
And I do think people are starting to realize that.
I do too. And which is a good thing because this has been happening now, 50, 60 years, I think. Neoliberalism has been kind of since the end of the New Deal capitalism.
Right.
Yeah. So, I nothing but solidarity and support from me for the rail workers. I know it's not my life, but I weirdly have been I was crushed when it felt like I was way too emotionally invested in this.
Well, I think because we've been talking about it a lot on the show.
Yeah.
And we had an opportunity to be hey, this could be a thing that moves the needle.
Totally.
And also, hey, we got Scranton Joe. You know what I mean? There's no way the Mr. Labor is gonna
Yeah.
Right. You know what I mean? It's
all the presidents, it should have been this one.
Right.
Help the railroad.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. It's like you said, disappointing, not surprising though.
I know. It really is.
All right. I got a little Starbucks news for you, motherfuckers.
This week in the Bucks.
Just this is what all over the place, I guess. People are really mad about the new tipping system at Starbucks. Tip culture is getting insane. Starbucks customers furious over company's new tipping system. The coffee chain implemented a new digital tipping system that prompts customers when they pay by card. So I guess now you have to add whether you hit $1, $2, $5, or you have to hit custom or no tip. and they have to ask you. You have to tell them. So now that they have to go. And here's the thing. The employees hate it more than the customers, I'm sure. That they're like, I have to ask because they're not allowed to touch it they're not allowed to do it for them.
Right.
They have to like, do you want to leave a tip? And it's just pay your fucking customers or pay your employees more.
And
so
I feel
doing
like
this.
I feel like with Starbucks, at least the ones here in LA, there's so many that are drive-through that you like hit. I bet you say that
that's
they're not
part
allowed
of it.
Yeah, like you have to like hand the thing through. It's like it makes it such an ordeal.
What's up with Starbucks? Some of these tweets are, what's up with Starbucks asking for a tip at the damn drive-thru? Why the fuck is Starbucks ask for a tip on the pin pad? Starbucks stresses me out every time they ask me to tip. But baristas, it also says in this article, baristas also don't seem to be loving the new system, as one Starbucks employee shared via TikTok in a video that's been viewed nearly 316,000 times. It's so embarrassing when customers, this is a quote, go, it's not going through. Bae, there's an extra. I believe I'm saying that. Bae, there's an extra step now. One barista captioned her clip, calling the new system one of the worst disasters to ever happen to humankind.
So wait,
okay, it's a little bit, maybe a touch hyperbolic.
I have a question though. How does the tip system, outside of the technical know-how, now that we know, like to leave the tip? How does the actual tipping system work, though? Because that money is still just being charged to the register. To like, are they dividing the tip up to the workers?
I think so. But here's the thing: then they can tax it. You know, if you get paid tipped out cash, you can, you can kind of. That's part of it too. This is from Starbucks. The expansion of digital tipping is part of the company's overreaching, quote unquote, reinvention plan, which aims to increase the company's revenue and both digital and physical footprints over the course of the next 3 years. So this is from, this is a quote. As we execute our reinvention plan, we are building on our 51-year history of market-leading innovation to position our business and our brand for the next chapter of growth, says Starbucks CEO and asshat Howard Schultz. Guided directly by our partners, we have already begun to take action on an inspired roadmap to build the future of Starbucks, all while staying true to our mission of uplifting communities through a shared love for coffee and further extending our coffee leadership and innovation. What a piece of shit.
Only a capitalist can take selling somebody a cup of coffee and turn it into an altruistic thing like building communities.
Right.
And trying to frame it that way. Shut the fuck up, dude.
And you know what? There's something to be said about like the barista who has worked at the coffee place for 10 years and who knows who knows all of like their clientele and their customers and who knows orders. Like there's something about that person saying, you know what? I actually love my job because people come in for their coffee and I get to see them and I get to meet and I feel connected to my community. But it's a whole other thing when you're the fucking billionaire CEO in a fucking literal ivory tower being like, I'm just trying to build communities. That's all I'm trying to do. Yeah. Oh, what's that? Oh, my Lamborghini's finished being washed. Thanks.
Hey man, I think what you just said is a perfect pitch for socialism. Like that, why wouldn't you want that barista who loves their job and has been there for years making decisions about, the direction of the decisions being made.
Right.
They clearly wouldn't have put that tip thing on there.
Right.
No.
You know what I mean? Like the baristas hate it too. So they were like, I wouldn't have done this.
Yeah.
They know.
Customers hate it. This guy doesn't know what the fuck he's doing.
This was real old news, but I don't know why, but that just reminded me of the thing that kind of went viral was that gentleman who worked at KFC. It was years ago when the minimum wage was still it is still such a big topic, but when the $15 minimum wage was such a big deal. And there was that gentleman who worked at KFC who, I don't remember what public forum he was given, but he spoke in some forum stating, like, people always tell me, oh, why don't I get a different job? And he's like, I love my job. Like, I'm a cook at KFC. I cook for my community. I feed my community. I love doing what I do. I should be able to love what I do, but also make enough money to feed my own family and to like have this as a career.
Hell yeah.
But it kind of reminds me of that, where it's like, that's a different, that like, you can sell me that story. I'll buy that. But when you're the CEO, go fuck yourself.
Yeah, no, the CEOs, like, they steal those stories from the actual workers.
100%.
They co-opt those stories and they make those stories about, then they make us think they're the innovators, they're the community creators, they're the, you know, like, and it's fucking bullshit.
Yeah.
It's so funny too, like, he couldn't do what they do.
No,
no
You
way.
know what I mean? You
No
put
way.
him in behind the fucking espresso machine. You know what I mean? They're the skilled labor. He's
Absolutely.
the unskilled labor.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's just
100%.
he doesn't know what. Yeah, it's
That was 100%. Like, that was like, there was some, I forget who it was, but there was somebody, there was like a socialist writer. I forget who it was, but he summed it up so well by saying, like, a CEO or an owner of a company is just an unnecessary middleman.
Wow.
That everybody gives all of this money to when they're superfluous.
Right.
They're unneeded. Amazon could totally run fine without Jeff Bezos.
Right. I think like once it gets to a point where the person who put all the pieces in order to do all the work have gotten to that point, then their whole job is to collect money.
Yeah. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Starbucks might be our last hope. Starbucks, like the workers of Starbucks, not Starbucks.
Right. I get it.
They might be our last hope.
This episode of Good Work is brought to you in part by The Chief, a New York City-based newspaper focused on municipal government, civil servants, and the important issues affecting New York State and federal employees. Visit thechiefleader.com, where you can subscribe for as little as $2.75 a month.
More than 400 years ago, there was a man who lived in Stratford-upon-Avon named Shakespeare. This is the man many consider to be the greatest writer of all time. Of course, the few things we really know about this guy are that he sold grain, didn't bother to teach his children to read or write, and was kind of a jerk to his wife, especially in his last will and testament. Meanwhile, 100 miles away from Stratford, on Elizabethan stages, plays were being performed written by someone signing the name William Shakespeare, a writer who often lampooned the monarchy and put his life at risk by doing so. The sort of thing that one may use a pseudonym for, sort of to, protect their identity. Surely you see where I'm going with this. A mistake was made all those years ago, and we attributed those legendary works to the wrong dude. Which begs the question, who really was William Shakespeare? Join me, Stephen Sable, as I invite historians, researchers, lawyers, artists, authors, and more to explore this fascinating mystery of Shakespeare authorship on my podcast called Don't Quill the Messenger. You can hear it now at don'tquillthepodcast.com or wherever you're listening to this podcast right now.
Welcome back, workers. For the second part of the program here, I want to talk about a movie, kinda, sorta. Enola Holmes. One would think, why the hell are we talking about a Sherlock Holmes extended universe story on Good Work? But it's because Alexandra and I recently watched the sequel. We recently watched Enola Holmes 2, which just came out on Netflix this past month. And first off, the main topic aside, they're fantastic. If you haven't seen the Enola Holmes movies, very entertaining. If you're a Sherlock Holmes nerd, you will enjoy it. The performances are great. It's really charming. It's really funny. It's a really, really exceptional series. But
quick question. Is Enola Holmes canon to the original books?
No. She's a new character.
She was not in the book. Yeah.
No, she's a new character.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. And is she his sister or his daughter?
She's a
sister,
younger sister, and
they all got weird names. That whole family got weird names, right?
They all very weird. It's
Sherlock, and the older brother is
crap! Now you put me on the spot here.
He works for the government. He's in the books.
Yes, yeah, and most everything else is there, with the exception of Enola and their mother, who's also like a fictionalized version of the classic.
That's cool.
Okay. So they're really, really great. But the reason I bring it up is because the sequel did one of my favorite things. I love it when fiction ties alternate realities to things that occurred in the real world. And much to my surprise, the story that they tell, the mystery that they weave of in Enola Holmes 2, available now on Netflix, not a sponsor, is the story of the Matchgirls strike of the late 1800s. In London, and
Jake, I'm so sorry. I don't want to.
No, go.
Mycroft.
Oh, Mycroft. Yes.
Yeah, that's his name. Okay. That's what I wouldn't have been listening the entire thing if I didn't get that out. Okay.
I appreciate that. So there's a bit of real life history built into the sequel of Enola Holmes, and obviously all of the Holmes stuff is fictionalized and made up people, but there are real characters that are real, or characters that are real people, and it's kind of fascinating. And it immediately made me go, well, I want to look this up. I don't know. Do you guys do that after you watch like a biopic where you go like,
totally,
all the time?
Yeah. All right. What was real in this? What, and so immediately I dove into what the true story was, and I thought, hey, this sounds like an episode of Good Work.
Hell yeah, I love this.
So, the strike of the Bryant and May factory workers happened in 1888, and it was historic in that it was led by primarily working class women, many of whom were immigrants, Irish and Irish descent immigrants. So not only is it a badass story, but it's a badass story about a bunch of badass women. So in the 19th century, it was discovered that adding white phosphorus to matchstick heads made them easier to ignite. So the demand for new strike anywhere matches became enormous and made for a giant business. The way that the matches were made was that they were used, or that they were sticks made of poplar or Canadian pine wood that was dipped into sulfur, and then you got one. All right, so he's holding a strike anywhere right now. Now that one does not have white phosphorus in it. And we will learn why shortly here. Oh no, I don't think you should still lick it. Matt is licking the matchstick he has. So they're dipped in sulfur, but then they're dipped into this composition of white phosphorus, potassium chlorate, antimony sulfide, powdered glass, a bunch of other shit, right? This concoction. But the level of white phosphorus in that concoction was sometimes as much as 10% of the total mixture. So 10% of the primary, stuff that was dipped in was white phosphorus. And it was one of those ingredients that like found its way everywhere. It was like glitter, where it was like, if you worked with it, it was under your nails, it was on your clothes. It was very, I don't know what the word is, infectious, but
ubiquitous.
It just got everywhere. Omnipresent. Oh, that was a good one. Yeah. The shit just got fucking everywhere.
Yeah.
So in 1852, Charles Dickens, look, I made it Christmassy, you guys. It's the holiday season. Became aware of an incredible danger regarding white phosphorus. It was so dangerous that in 52, Dickens wrote about it. He had a weekly magazine called the Household Words, which I never knew about. Household Words. And it was like the little Dickens magazine he just put out. So he wrote about a specific factory's requirements that employees of the factory had to cleanse themselves with alkaline water in order to neutralize the acidic phosphorus. Match dippers in that same factory he spoke about had to wear sponges in the front of their mouths soaked in alkaline solution to mitigate effects of phosphorus on the human body. He also claims that this and other ventilation created a safer environment for the employees. The big issue, of course, was something called Fossy Jaw. They literally named it after the thing that occurred, specifically working with white phosphorus. Fosse jaw was developed by inhalation of the white phosphor and all of its vapor. And considering that that the concoction that was 10% white phosphorus was heated up, that the matches were dipped into, it was all over the place. It was everywhere. It was in the air. It was unavoidable.
And for our musical theater nerd listeners, Fosse jaw is not to be confused with the famous choreography move in the musical Chicago.
Do you know named after what? Come on, we're gonna test your nerds here.
Yeah, named
Bob
after
Fosse.
Miss Fosse.
Bob Fosse. Bob Fosse is the Corey. Come on, you guys are terrible theater nerds.
I know.
So, anyways, but listen to this.
Would you say to me?
Here's the thing: is the inhalation of this, like what Fosse jaw was, it led to toothaches and basic flu-like symptoms, but then it would become tooth loss, abscesses, swelling of the gums, and ultimately necrosis of the jaw. Your jaw would just die.
Oh my God.
Mortality was reported in around 20% of the cases of Fosse jaw. So
what do you mean your jaw would die? Did it fall off you?
Like necrosis?
I think like it would, in the way that like I don't know. I know. This is the first thing that comes to mind because I had a pug whose eye died once, where like they're literally like their eye became detached, like the eyeball, and like literally like it no longer gets blood from the body. It no longer like your body no longer sends it nutrients. The skin kind of deteriorates around.
Does it? Do they have to remove it though, the eye, or did it just stay there?
A lot. Well, that ended up getting removed. Yes, and in order to pretty much live if you had Fosse jaw, you almost had to get your jaw removed. And considering it's 18, 50s, 18, to the 18, or 1850s.
The gangrene would just spread, right?
100%.
Yeah.
And also 20%. So if you had Fosse jaw, 1 in 5 people who ended up Fosse jaw was dead.
Oh, man.
So those that did survive generally also suffered from brain damage. And get this, their jaw would glow in the dark from the phosphorus.
Holy shit.
Like,
that's fucking cool.
Imagine blowing the lights out and your just fucking room is illuminated by your own jaw.
Oh my God. Why the jaw?
I think because it came with the inhalation and yeah. Well,
why not the top? I was just saying, why not the top teeth?
There's another part of this. We'll get to it.
Oh my God.
Here's the thing is about this specific factory that Dickens wrote about was unfortunately not a Bryant and May factory who dominated the matchstick industry. To give you an idea of how quick Bryant and May took over, in 1850, the company sold 2,031 boxes of matches, so about 250,000. By 1860, 10 years later, 30 million matches. And this was before they started to export out of England.
What year is this?
This is 1860 is when they were at the 30 million mark.
It's probably peak match time. That's because it's before electricity.
100%. These were such a big necessity. Yeah. And London is also, this booming hub of, Western civilization at the time.
Chimneys everywhere.
Right.
Jack the Ripper's just being born.
Yeah. He's not even, you know what? Fosse took out more people than Jack the Ripper did, Fosse jaw.
Oh, shit.
So the company became so huge that by 1861, they relocated to this massive 3-acre site in Bow, East London. And regardless of everything that was already known to science about the dangers of white phosphorus, capitalism shall prevail. Listen, we need our matches to strike easy and light well. So by 1880, so this is 20 years after they moved and opened this. So this has been occurring for 2 decades now. The company employed 2,000 people, of which between 1,200 and 1,500 were women and girls, some as young as 6 years old. This is where the term Matchgirls comes from. And in Enola Holmes, like, it immediately starts with like, oh, we're Matchgirls. Like, it's the mystery is about this match girl who goes missing. And you kind of see in the movie a kind of a representation of what would occur. And a version of like what a factory floor might look like.
What is match girl? What does that term mean?
So it was so essentially it was the occupation of not the forming of the match, because that was generally done by a small group of men and machinery, but the women who then had to box the matches and bundle. So they would put 100 matches per box and then bundle, I think, 12 boxes together, tie it. And so these are the people who are directly handling the matches.
I get that, but I thought you said that's where the term match girl comes from. I thought that term meant something else.
Oh,
today.
No. I just meant like the referring to, like, because it's called the Great Match Girl Strike. And like in the movie.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought it was like a hip thing that people said about people.
And we still use it
people
today.
and I was like, what?
So when you're using Match.com and you're trying to find love, we look for some match girls.
Got a match girl.
So yeah, it was a super common occupation for the demographic because it was abundant for, again, a lot of these are mostly Irish immigrants and Irish descent. They worked 6-day weeks, 12 to 14-hour days. And the pay was extremely low to begin with, as you can imagine, but most workers were lucky if they even took home what they were supposed to, because there were a series of fines that were levied by foremen who oversaw the match girls. So on the floor, there were foremen just walking around, making sure everything was, running tip top. So the money would be directly deducted from wages for, fines that were penalties. Some of them listed are insane. Having an untidy workbench, boom, fine, coming out of your paycheck. Talking or having dirty feet, keep in mind, many of the workers couldn't afford shoes, right? And so if you had dirty feet,
I can't believe you weren't allowed to have dirty feet in a factory in London in the 1860s.
Well, it was just a way for them to, like, they were just finding any excuse to not pay these people. Being late, huge fine. And then what was the other one? Oh, this is the big one. Was you would almost lose you would guarantee to lose your entire day's wage if there was a burnt match on your workbench. So while you were boxing and handling strike anywhere matches that are known for lighting very easily, if you accidentally lit one, you're not getting paid that day.
That's crazy.
That is absolutely insane. And to make matters darker, on top of that, the foremen were often physically abusive, and they prevented any complaints about working conditions or about foremen from reaching upper management, as you might assume. All of which, of course, they're being exposed to white phosphorus. And it wasn't only that they were working in it and touching in it, and I think this is why it was such a big deal with the jaw, Matt, is because there was no break room. They were forced to eat all of their meals on the floor where they worked at their benches. So what likely was happening was everything they ate was contaminated. All the food had white phosphorus over literally everything. This is fantastic. Bryant and May were aware, of course, of the Fosse jaw issue. And so what they started to do is they started to have the foreman check the mouths of all the employees on their way into the factory, including squeezing their faces. They were doing this to try to see if the women would wince to prove that they had a toothache. And if they had a toothache, or if someone admitted to having a toothache, then they were told that they need to have the tooth removed immediately, which of course they didn't do or pay for, or you're fired. So of course women were then hiding and doing the best they can to hide their pain because they need this job. So all of that shit's happening, and then we cue something called the Fabian Society. This feels like something James already knows about. James, you know about the Fabian Society?
I don't.
This seems like your wheelhouse. So the Fabian Society was a British socialist organization whose purpose was to advance the principles of social democracy and democratic socialism through democratic reform, opposed to some other versions of this sort of society that would be more about violent revolution.
Yeah.
So this was like, they were still elite sort of people in culture and whatnot. And a lot of them were writers and authors and Marxists and whatnot. But they have meetings. And during a meeting on June 15th of 88, Clementina Black who is a writer, triggered a conversation by highlighting the state of female labor, which then sparked other members of the society to look into the business practices of Bryant and May. And they discovered that they were taking 20% dividends for shareholders, so essentially paying their shareholders, the people paying them, very handsomely, despite the fact that they were paying employees starvation wages. So the Fabian Society, which just sounds fantastic. This sounds like something out of Sherlock Holmes, which is why I feel like it was a perfect fit.
The Fabian Society.
So this, triggered an interest. And the day after the meeting, a Fabian writer, Annie Besant, did some investigative journalism. Besant ran this weekly magazine called The Link, which was this like Marxist socialist paper that she just published weekly and distributed to, the streets. So she went out the next day and spoke to the factory girls outside the factory doors and asked for like honest accounts of what it's like to work there. And they were all very honest, told their stories. And she took all of that information and published an article on the 23rd of June called White Slavery in London. And there's a quote that I think is fantastic that I want to share from this badass writer, Annie Besant. Failing a poet to hold up their conduct to the execration of posterity, enshrined in deathless verse, let us strive to touch their consciousness, i.e. their pockets, and let us at least avoid being partakers of their sins by abstaining from using their commodities. So she essentially writes to boycott Bryant and May. This gets a bunch of publicity because she's a well-known writer. Bryant and May threatened to sue Annie for libel, and then in response, an attempt to save face publicly from this boycott, demanded that all of the employees, all the Matchgirls, sign a paper that stated that they agree that everything in the article was not true. That everything Annie wrote about, no, that's not what it's like to work here. You have to sign this paper. And the Matchgirls all refused to sign it in mass. This was like this fucking badass moment where they all just went, no, screw that. We're not signing it because it's not true. To try to make an example, they fired one of the women. And this was like the spark that triggered a massive strike. Women just began walking off. And by the end of the day, 1,400 women and girls refused to work for the factory. The management immediately tried to like reinstate the woman they fired. But the Matchgirls demanded other concessions and said, you know what? That's not enough now. We want to get rid of the fines. We want to not have to deal with the dangers of foster jaw and all this other shit. And by July 6th, the entire factory stopped work. So you figure that Fabian Society meeting was, June 15th. And that was the first time that was like, hey, what's happening over at Bryant and May? And by July 6th, what's that, 3 weeks? The entire factory is shut down. The strikers reached back out to Annie, who helped coordinate assistance for all of these women who were ultimately out of their league. Like, they had the power as the workers, but they didn't know. They didn't know, like, how do they go about bargaining? Like, they had all just kind of left their job without much guidance. So they reached out to her and she helped them form a strike committee, which was made up of 8 women. One of them named Sarah Chapman, who's fictionally depicted in Enola Holmes, a character in that who's a real life person who doesn't quite play the same role, but is a primary factor in this, the strike committee. So the committee goes to management and they make all their demands. And at this point, tons of publicity. The London Trades Council became involved, which is like essentially the union of unions that started paying attention to this. And of course, all of this was a massive issue for Bryant of Bryant and May, because apparently in public life, he was very liberal and he was terrified of all the bad publicity that was now, coming down on Bryant and May. So eventually terms were formulated at a meeting in July, and they were fines, deductions for the cost of materials and other unfair deductions would be abolished. Grievances could finally be taken to management without having to worry about the foreman. All of the girls would be taken back. So they were written in the clause that you had to take everybody back. Like, there was no like, well, we're not taking back you 3 because you were the problems. Everybody got their jobs back. And more importantly, meals were to be eaten in a separate room so that the food could be prepared in a way that would not be contaminated with phosphorus. And in the face of all the bad press, the terms were accepted and the strike ended. The 8 women who comprised the strike committee, joined by a few others, would eventually form the Union of Women Matchmakers. And the very first enrollment of that union resulted in 468 unionists. It grew from there and became the largest female union in the country. Eventually, they became the Matchmakers Union, and they welcomed both male and female members. So it's a fucking badass story about how, a bunch of, general kids, mostly really young, like the average age of the worker there was probably 17 because they were as old as like 25. In fact, the woman who's kind of put in the forefront, Sarah Chapman, was only 24. And she was like a senior employee of the factory. And so you figure like these were mostly young immigrant women who just pretty much said, fuck it, we're done. And it led to a union, which then led to a bigger union. Nice of them to eventually welcome men in. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I love being 24.
Right.
And being yeah, I'm 24, been working here the last 16 years.
Right. Yes, you're not wrong though. I mean, they said some of the employees were as young as 6.
It's crazy.
That all happened in 1888. And it was still up until 1901 that Bryant and May received such bad publicity that in 1901, they finally announced that their factory would no longer use white phosphorus. So even though all that shit happened, here's the thing. There was always an alternative, red phosphorus. It was just more expensive. And red phosphorus was not as dangerous as white phosphorus, but it was always a matter of making it as cheap as possible. That looks
Why is this white?
I don't think that's the phosphorus. I think phosphorus is part. I think you're looking at your match at the tip of it. I think it's more about the green part of your match. That's that would be the primary function there. But
so it's green phosphorus.
Maybe, who knows? Phosphorus. I don't know. I don't know if the matches are still made the exact same way today. I would assume that they're not wildly different. But in 1908, eventually, 10 years after that, the House of Commons passed an act prohibiting the use of white phosphorus in matches. So here's the thing: is this shit was a known danger as early as 50 when Dickens was writing about it in 1852, and it still was not made illegal until 1908. So it still took over 50 years for capitalism to even be like, oh, this thing is killing people. Maybe we should get involved. But
I feel like at that time, in that time period, all jobs had a 90% fatality
rate.
Yeah,
of course.
It was just like, it was just fucking dangerous to be to do anything.
Right.
But horse a shoe a horse.
Yeah, you could horse. But like even just the fact that it's a predatory employer because it's clearly like these women need work and there's not a lot and they pay them next to nothing and there's an abundance of them because of immigration. And so like it I don't know, it was this perfect mixture of just like an abusive capitalist who was at the top of the industry, because again there were other factories that weren't this dangerous, that obviously everything, it's just working with white phosphorus is dangerous to begin with, but that were taking precautions that Bryant and May were just like, nah, fuck it, not worth it, we're the biggest name, what are they gonna do? But I thought it was fascinating, and it's a badass.
You learn a little something from Hollywood sometimes.
Every now and then,
or even if that was London, it's still a Hollywood.
But it's and the movie does a really great job of I gotta say,
Enola.
like it's an emotional ending. Like the depictions of Matchgirls in the movie is really really good. And it's real fun and real sweet, and it's also just like a entertaining movie too. But the first thing that I did, because when the movie starts, it says some of this really happened, and that's why I was like, wait, what? I thought I was watching the fucking Sherlock Holmes. Like, what do you mean some of this really happened? And
then then what did the TV say back?
Wait,
when you went, wait, I thought I was watching Sherlock Holmes TV.
It didn't respond. Do you not question your television at all times like I do?
I can't talk to my television. Only my remote control.
Oh.
Yeah, that's who I talk to.
Pretty soon Bezos will have us talking to it all, but Yeah, interesting. And, at the end of the movie, it sheds some light on like what, some of this story, which is why I immediately was like, well, now I need to Google and learn everything. And
that's great. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that story, Jake. Good work.
Good work. Well, thanks for joining us today and every day here at Good Work. If you enjoy what you're listening to, please head on over to goodworkpod.com. That is your one-stop shop for all things Good Work. There you can find links to the Discord community if you'd like to join in the conversation. You can find official Good Work merchandise. Snag yourself a shirt, a mask, a mug. Great way to support the show. And of course, links to our personal social media accounts, those of us who have them, and the Good Work social media accounts. All of that's at goodworkpod.com.
And if you want to get in touch with us, you can email us at goodworkpod@gmail.com or call the Good Work voicemail box at 929-256-5151.
Please subscribe, rate, and review the show on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And lastly, consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/goodworkpod. Help us keep doing this this little show that we do, and become a patron.
Absolutely. And tis the season of giving. It's that time of the year. I'd like to urge all of our listeners to check out dragonwagonradio.com/support. Dragonwagonradio.com/support. There you can watch a little video in which you can learn all about what Dragon Wagon Radio is, how it came to be, how it operates, and how you can help continue to make it a fantastic hub for independent podcasters to produce high quality material just like Good Work for completely free to you, the listeners. There are 20 shows that fly the Dragon Wagon Radio banner. And if you're enjoying this show or any of them, please check out dragonwagonradio.com/support this season of giving. Thanks again for listening, everybody. Good work, guys.
Good work. Good work.
Dragon Wagon.